with us now is another legend, our Honorable Finance and HRM Minister, and it's truly an honor that Dr. PTR is here. And I think it's such an apt person to be here to deliver the keynote address. And Dr. Anandakrishnan would be happy with the choice of the chief guest, I'm sure. I now invite the Honorable Finance Minister of Tamil Nadu, Dr. PTR Palanivel Thiagarajan, to deliver the keynote address.
The members of Professor Anandakrishna's family, starting with Mrs. Anandakrishnan, Vice Chancellor of Anna University, Dr. Velraj, very distinguished educationalist, former Vice Chancellor, Madras University, Professor S.P. Thiagarajan, my friend, former Chairman of the Ethraj College Trust, through V.M. Muralidharan, the Registrar of Anna University, many distinguished guests, friends. Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and speak today on this wonderful occasion on the 94th birthday of Professor Anandakrishnan. You know, as a politician, we get invited, or I get invited to speak at many events. Of course, some we do as service to the people, some we do because of professional interest, some we do because it's close to our heart. In this case, there's probably the last reason which is prevalent. As has been pointed out by other people today, at the core of the Dravidian movement is this notion of self-respect, equality, social justice, self-determination, self-governance, that human beings, all of us, should be on the same plane and should have the same access. In my case, my great-granduncle was one of the founders of the South Indian Liberal Federation, served as its vice president. My grandfather served as a member, minister, chief minister, president. My father served in the DMK, and now I'm here. For all of us, it has always been a choice about those values and those goals. By God's grace, we were relatively economically self-sufficient. All of us were well educated. We had other opportunities in life. But for the sake of that vision of an egalitarian and inclusive society, we came back in respective paths to do what we could. But all of us focused on one thing: education. Education is the key to providing social mobility, it's the key to increasing average productivity, it's the key to ensuring inclusion of all segments of the community in the fruits of development. As many have talked here today, there is an inherent conflict when you're trying to achieve your goal like universal education. Quantity versus quality. If you go very fast, you can expand. The Vice Chancellor talked about some of the pluses and minuses of speed. If you go very fast, you can expand the quantity, but you'll not be able to manage the quality. In the case of Tamil Nadu, for good or bad, we are at a situation where quantitatively we are, as somebody pointed out today, twice the national average in terms of gross enrollment in higher education, more than most developed countries, advanced countries. And I think the number 2 state may be in the 30s, maybe like 15 points behind us. So at some level we have succeeded greatly in quantity. In quality, not so much. Again, as the Vice Chancellor pointed out, and I pointed out here when I was at this same hall for some other function, when I graduated from the Regional Engineering College, then Regional Engineering College Trichy in 1987, the state of Tamil Nadu produced about 3,000, 4,000 engineers. Today it's something like 1.5 lakh. Surely we have not been able to maintain the average quality. But at some level, we're always trying to find the balance. As again, Mr. Muralidharan mentioned, the CM has taken it as his pet project to focus on Naan Mudhalvan, to bring a professionalism, a work ethic, kind of persistence into the approach to working and the approach to productivity. Then, of course, the state doing its own part in terms of better data collection, better career guidance, better advice, not just to the students, but to their parents also, because we have scaled up education so fast that something like 70% of all college entering students are first generation students, meaning their parents didn't go to college. So nobody to advise them. What should you do? What are the career options? How will you progress, etc. We understood those things. We've been talking about them, at least to my knowledge, for 5 years. As an opposition member, I brought it up in my maiden speech in the Assembly in 2016. Now the CM has greatly focused on that and taken it as his pet project. We'll do something there. But the great thing about the professor's work, as again many people mentioned here, was that he touched both aspects of it. He was the one who helped with ensuring access and social justice through a single window, through the elimination of the entrance exam. Entrance exams that crystallize and perpetuate inequity between well-off and not so well-off people. So documented, proved, and sustained court challenges and other, barriers or crossed other barriers and implemented successfully the removal of entrance exams. On the other hand, at institutions like Anna University, at institutions like IIT Kanpur, ensured that the highest quality was maintained, and we produced, engineers of brilliance, among other things. We always have this question: how do you evaluate an institution? And there's no easy answer, but my rule of thumb now, after my experiences in life, if you're talking about an institution that is perceived as an elite institution, like Anna University or a special school or IIT, then the benchmark is, what is the lowest scoring or least employable person coming out of it? What do they do? That tells you whether the institution is really being inclusive, accessible to all, and serving its purpose, because most governments invest heavily in such institutions of excellence. If, on the other hand, you're looking at a government school, let's say in a poor neighborhood, then to me the benchmark is, what is the best case outcome? Was there at least one student here who was able to make a huge career, be an entrepreneur, end up in the IAS, etc.? It means that there is enough in the system that at least the right talent can be encouraged and brought out and progressed. Of course, as a state, we are worried about the weighted average outcome. That's what the people elect us to do. We are not just worried about elite institutions, not just about corporation schools in poor districts, though those are, overweight in our attention. But we want the total output. And I think it's a truism that most people forget, that at least as far as finances are concerned, two things are 100% true. As a government, you get the revenues that you design the systems and processes and checks and balances and discipline for. If you don't do those things right, of course your finances fail, like we saw in the last 7 or 8 years. It's not rocket science. And in reverse, you get out the kind of money you invest in. Yesterday I was in a seminar that I had asked to be run on the government of Tamil Nadu's policy about leasing its own land. We see huge discrepancies. We see thousands of acres leased at almost zero cost to big corporations. We see small plots of land leased at high rates. So I refused to sign any file extending any lease or renewing any lease for the last year till we come up with a comprehensive policy, as I announced in the budget. So we had a seminar to do that. And in that seminar, it became very clear that we didn't have a consistent kind of approach on what is it that the state considers subsidizable. What is it that we consider is such a great social good that we should kind of not charge for a huge piece of commercially viable property. And what is it that we want to raise the revenues and give it to the people, or use it to fund corporation schools in poor neighborhoods? So if we don't think about these things, you'll not get the right answer. In fact, one of my fellow speakers or guests at the event yesterday was a sitting judge of the Madras High Court. And I pointed out that as a percentage of our GDP or of our budget, we invest very little into the judicial system, and we pay the consequence for that every day. We don't have an efficient dispute resolution mechanism, which is a building block for growth. And therefore, we see cases linger for 10 years, 20 years. We have all these backlogs. And when you go to the High Court, it's like watching kind of rapid dating. One High Court judge will hear like 20 cases in the course of 5 minutes or 15 minutes. So it has become a broken down system from a lack of resources. And then right after me, the Honorable Judge spoke, and he cited some statistics about how many judges are there, what is the caseload per judge, and how we cannot expect anything better. So there are some profound issues as a society we need to look into. I don't want to get too far into portfolios beyond my domain, so I won't talk a lot about what we need to do in education or higher education. The author, the Vice Chancellor have already spoken extensively of the many ideas and many questions raised in this important book. I will say that it definitely enlightens the debate, and as the Chief Minister yesterday said, and I'll add today, we are at the place where we can use a lot of these inputs when we work through what is much needed reform and improvement in our educational system. I will just say that since this is the birthday of the professor, it is not just about the book, but it's also an opportunity to pay respects and to celebrate his life. I am very grateful, therefore, that I had the privilege of attending both the release function yesterday and to come here and speak for a few minutes and record my respect and regards. I only met him personally a few times, mostly because I lived overseas for 30 years. But every time I met him, I was always impressed both by his demeanor and his erudition. And I think the range of experience and service and education that he had came through in the way he handled things. So on that note, let me thank the organizers once again for arranging this event. I'm sure this book will make a major contribution to the debate, I said, not just to the government of Tamil Nadu, but other governments. I therefore compliment and congratulate Mr. Nedunchezhian for all of his work. I thank all of you for coming here, especially the professor's family for giving us all this opportunity. And I will take my leave. Nandri, Vanakkam.
Thank you very much, sir, and for gracing this occasion. Your speech indeed was really good, and as I said, you were the apt person today, and thank you so much for accepting the invitation and coming here today. And one can only imagine if Dr. Anandakrishnan was here, the conversation that Dr. PTR Anandakrishnan would have, it would be such an intellectually stimulating conversation. But I'm sure through the book he's talking to you.